Second. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Marc Alessi. I'm the Executive Director of the Business Incubator Association of New York State. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we're a trade association of now 120 incubators and accelerators across New York State. The organization was started back in 2006 officially. Their first meeting was in 2005. At that time, it was 15 incubators around the state that had never met each other and were brought together to start sharing some common ground. And they realized that they should form this organization. It's grown year over year, and we are now at 120 members. We only allow incubators and accelerators into the membership. And then we have other opportunities for others in the ecosystem to participate in some of our programming. Today, I'm joined by someone I've known for a long time in the ecosystem, but one of our newest members through FirstXFounders. But I think, Mary, the first time we met, you were running a program for ERA in New York City at Microsoft, and I was an entrepreneur with a biomedical device company. It was a fantastic program, but I've seen your offerings grow both by jurisdiction and state and locations, but also in a lot of the programming. So thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to learning more about your newest endeavors. But if you wouldn't mind, if you could just give a little background on, I know that you're a serial entrepreneur that is now mentoring companies, and that's a lot of what FirstXFounders is about. But if you can give a little bit of a background to everyone on the call.
Oh, certainly. Thank you so much, Marc. It's a pleasure to be here. And I was one of those people in David Hockman's group of a dozen, and I think maybe 9 people might have shown up at those first meetings. And everybody stood in that room and stared at each other. And it was a different era than what you've got going, and it's just so exciting to have been part of this and see how vibrant as you've taken it over and everything that you have contributed. Your understanding of the state is a huge change and a wonderful has made a big difference for what incubators and accelerators are doing. And you just look at yesterday's newsletter with a finalist from Binghamton in the RIE competition. That's extraordinary. That was unthinkable 18 years ago when we were in those meetings, that something like that could even possibly have happened. But there's so much good news, and it's such an incredible depth of experience and expertise that's all over the state. That's part of what you are advocating for and helping us all connect to each other. So thank you for your work. It's really incredible to be part of it and to see the recognition that's coming, and it's just so, you look at the statistics of state and federal funding and state contributions. New York is just way out in front in terms of support of incubators, accelerators, so it's fantastic to be here and to be part of this group where there are people who I've had a chance to meet and hear about some programs, but they're just it's a really incredibly vibrant group. So we, besides being around a while, we have been fortunate to support life science. So we're focusing on life sciences, and we started with working with the municipal governments of New York City with the EDC in 2012. I snuck in at the end of the Bloomberg administration, and were covered for 3 years to start a program that became known as the eLab NYC program, and had the fortune of, working in New York City when there's obviously tremendous business acumen and not a lot of, at that time, businesses servicing entrepreneurs in New York City. So very, very incredible time to see so many extraordinary people that we had a chance to work with and who have gone on to just make huge changes and put New York City on the map. People like Cressalon, Joe Landolina, who was in that first group, Valen Graham, who was in that first group. So many HistoWiz, which recently, had this massive investment, but also people like Mikhail Kamal, who worked in doing a low-cost postpartum hemorrhage medical device that, got funded the whole way through clinical trials, often non-dilutive funding. It was just extraordinary for me as a serial entrepreneur who had been involved doing acquisitions in tech and hardware and systems for Bain and Kodak and in Boston with VCs to see whole different ways of doing business. And I thought, wow, I've spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley working with companies who are getting off the ground, and I've never seen anything like this. And it just continues to be just an extraordinary experience of innovation, not just on the technology side, but who the founders are, how they're building their companies, how they're working with other people. It's really just has never slowed down. It's been an incredible time. So, I feel like at the end of every cohort we run, we as the so-called teachers learn more than we probably teach. And we get pulled along by entrepreneurs who are asking us why not. Why can't we do it this way? And then they do it, and then there's a new way of doing things. So we want to talk about a little bit about that and how that's influenced us. But there's just an awful lot of what we have learned that I also want to share with the crowd, because there's so many people here who are involved in this. We've had a wonderful opportunity to collaborate with people. We'll be talking about some of the work we did at Downstate 3 years after we started the eLab program, and we work with Eva Kramer and David Norton and Sam Keel putting together that program and running that since then. Very different kind of follow-on program. We that's been a kind of low-profile program for us, but it's incredibly high impact. We also, because of the outreach work that we do in some of the events like the pitch events, I've had a chance to meet people in other states, and we, as you said, got an invitation to go out to Connecticut and to develop a program for the state of Connecticut, and then return to Westchester County to start a program for Westchester County. So right now we've got 4 programs. We relaunched eLab, and we'll talk a little bit about how that's changed. But it's been a time where things are incredibly vibrant in terms of what continues to be part of the evolution in the community and things that we're learning. We do have a couple of slides we can share if that's okay with you. And we'll put that up. I want to introduce Doris Alcivar, who's here on this call. She is running the Westchester program and also the eLab program. So we're very, very fortunate to have her join us from the Columbia Executive MBA program. And we can talk.
Hey, Doris, how are you?
It's been really fun working with you, Marc. First with some of the incubators like SUNY Downstate, which has been part of the Business Incubator Association of New York State, and also with Westchester County. And I know that the Office of Economic Development. Deborah Novick is on your board.
Yep.
So there's a wonderful amount of work that we've been doing to try and connect with other parts of the state, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So we rebranded as First Time Founder. A lot of people wondered why in the world we were changing our name because eLab was so well known. What we found was that what we were doing really, it came down to supporting the founders. And one of the things that is noticeable about the First Time Founders is that they may come from any background and they may be at different stages, but having not run a business before was one of the key parts. Once you've come through this, there's a lot that you have learned, and when you haven't come through it, one of the big challenges for everybody who's in this room and is how do you work with people who don't know what they don't know? And it's not an existential question. It's an everyday challenge because people are used to be busy and now they're have even more to do. And so how do you grab people's attention to help them? So we have focused on the education and on networking. That's what we're known for, is both of those aspects of it. And our goal has been to develop ecosystems. So for us, that means networking people to one another so that they can advance their ventures and contribute to technically what's known as technology-based economic development. So that's what goes on in the back of our minds as we are working on these sets of programs. And we'll kind of dig into that and talk a little bit about these 4 programs, which we introduced. eLab was first, then Next Milestone, then ABCT, and then the Catalyst. And I have to say that one of the things that, just as you've been able to help coalesce and grow a community of incubators and accelerators, we were involved in the very first regional pitch events. There had been no collaboration across geographic lines, and we see a very big difference now from those initial efforts where Connecticut and New York City agreed to work together, and then Westchester joined in with that, and downstate's always been part of this whole regional ecosystem. So it's really an extraordinary difference when I look at the community in Boston, which is very much more siloed and I would say more challenging to get involved in as an outsider, whereas I would say in New York, it's a lot different dimension.
I could comment on that, and then a quick question. So the comment I have, the BIANYS with 120 members, as we go to the INBIA, which is the International, used to be the International Business Incubator Association, but it's Business Innovation Association to account for that they have accelerators as we do. We are by far and large the largest consortium of incubators by state, even much larger than even California. Doesn't mean California doesn't have as many incubators as New York does. They're just not as collaborative. And so that's a unique thing that's happening in New York and has been growing. And so now translating that to what you were just mentioning with biosciences, is it part of our collaborative nature in the New York metro area, or what you're seeing? New York City has obviously gone all in on life sciences. Westchester and the Hudson Valley had branded themselves BioHub Valley. Long Island, which is just right next door, their focus is life sciences. And then you're saying Connecticut as well. What's driving that? Why is life sciences so strong in that? I'm not going to even call it a triangle, but that concentric circle.
Well, I think before Boston branded itself as a biotech hub, most people were aware that the center of pharma business was New Jersey. And so there's a legacy there in New Jersey, which has been the beneficiary for anybody starting ventures in New York and in Connecticut. So there's a lot of traffic across, what used to be called the Tappan Zee is now called the Mario Cuomo Bridge, where people, get a job, at Boehringer Ingelheim after they leave Pfizer, and maybe they go from Merck over to Roche, and then they're, onto, there's a lot of back and forth, and a lot of the people on the therapeutic side have that expertise. In Connecticut, there's that, long advanced manufacturing with the overlap between the skills and equipment that are used in defense and in medical devices. So, and certainly New Jersey is full of medical device companies with, J&J and so many, all the diagnostic work that is supported by Quest. So you see a lot of movement, fantastic transportation, although we all get frustrated by New Jersey Transit and things that happen, and but that just doesn't exist in other places. And so the concentration, and then certainly the the stock market's been great since 2013 in these areas. So while there was a correction in pharma, we're still seeing just a lot of people making money and moving things along, at the early stages. And for exits, it's been, a prolonged, I haven't been in clean tech. That was a very short cycle in 2008 until 2011. It's back now with the Biden administration initiatives. But a lot of cycles are not as long as they have been in life sciences, which allows for, I think, government, which runs on a clock that's not as fast as business, to actually engage. And they've all engaged. So that's been, I think, an extraordinary commonality. But I would also say that there's a lot about the leadership of these organizations. They are all willing to actually advance these ventures. We have ventures in Westchester who are getting supported by Fuse Hub upstate. They're getting supported by Kathy Durden at Upstate Medical. We've got people who have won pitch competitions at Upstate Capital. And, that kind of welcoming of people who are from different communities, from different programs, from different incubators. I think that is a hallmark of the leaders who are opening their doors and sharing contacts and allowing different people to come in and participate and be highlighted.
So we already have some questions from the audience, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off on my questions and then questions from the audience, because I do want to make sure we take the time and get, this is a member highlight. So please continue with your presentation, but if we can, I'd like to save some time at the end for some questions.
Oh, sure. And if you want to go through some questions, I'm happy to take them, Mark, wherever you think it'd be helpful. So, that's kind of the long background to this. So what do we do? And what makes it different, right? Because there's so many, there are 120 incubators and programs that you've gotten your BIANYS, right? And there are other people starting up all the time, and fantastic competitions that are here, and then people who come from other places to start up efforts. So one of the things is we're very focused on protectable IP-based ventures in the life sciences area, right? So, we're not doing anything in clean tech, we're not doing anything in telecom, we're not doing anything in a lot of areas where there's opportunities like quantum right now. So, we're really kind of specific effort. We took the model, which is one that you see in a lot of centrally planned economies, where there's a strategy for where you want to be in 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. And we said, look, if you're going to get into life sciences, it's going to take 10 years to build a community. And that's a really hard thing to sell. because you're not going to be seeing anything in year 1, year 2. We never expected and tell people it's 3 years before you'll see anything. And we've gotten lucky. And I think of it that way, where people have had a chance to have some things happen before 10 years, but it is a long haul. And to have people understand that that's the commitment, and to figure out the math of how do you stay, live to fight another day, where the life of the product cycle of a new company is so long, is a real trick. And I think that there's just no way around it. And I think that that's one of the challenges for people coming into these programs. They think it can't possibly be that long. And the challenge for us in all running these programs is getting the support to have the consistency and the learning that needs to go on in our programs to even deliver this, and to stay abreast of all the changes. It's a a high impact sport to play these things. We spend a lot of time trying to figure out whether what we do makes any difference. We are not sure that how we measure the impact is the right way to measure the impact. That's a negotiation. We collect a lot of information and try and figure out, does any of this matter? Is it associative? Is there a correlation? Is there, what happens, and some of this you don't know for a long, long time. And it all seems like a lot of luck on top of that, right? So, but we spend a lot of effort from the very beginning looking at impact. And here are some of the things that we, kind of summarize this is, in Westchester, 41 ventures have graduated over the first 4 years as half cohort in the first year. That's not a lot of people who come through here. These are really big investments that are made. A lot of patents got filed just in this past year by the 12 ventures. People have raised over 30 million. And one of the things that's fascinating for people who know the bioscience field is that people are actually selling. So we do a lot of encouragement of people, and it's definitely something that's in the air right now, that if you have an opportunity for revenue, you got to show it. And that doesn't end there. Then you got to explain and defend that you've actually got a scaling plan and that you're going somewhere with all of this, all of which adds a lot of pressure to very young organizations. They're hiring a ton of people and they're staying in business. These are all really important when you realize that the first 3 cohorts were done under COVID, right? So people weren't meeting anybody. We have different data in Connecticut, but there really is a big impact in being in person for all of these numbers compared to being online. So tricky at the very earliest stages running it this time. But so these are some of the things we look at, and when we think about the networking, where does that come from? We deliberately have gone out and tried to find organizations that can help the networking, the mentorship, the education of the ventures, and there have been a lot of generosity. These people are not just involved in our programs, they're involved in other people's programs, and they're very interested in finding out about other people's programs and getting involved. So, this is important, and there are very different perspectives that we gain from the people who are on the board. We're also supported by a number of corporate supporters. A lot of these were also selected because these people were filling gaps that our ventures had challenges with. Pfizer has incredible expertise in how things are done, and things are done commercially differently than they're done academically. And having people to be able to explain those differences has been really important. Boehringer Ingelheim has invested in a number of ventures who have come through the program, which has been terrific. We've learned a lot from Moses Singer, who's very involved in New York, on all sorts of issues from cybersecurity to DEI. and has leadership positions within the legal community in those areas as well. And intellectual property has just gotten more and more complex as the laws have changed in Europe and the practices have changed with software. So figuring out how you make sure this effort to build a company isn't knocked off has been and is a really important challenge. We as we think about uh, ventures and where people can go to, we've asked, how do you, go and recruit people to come join? And so at the end of every program, we do a lot of surveying, and this is what they said is working. But I got to tell you, when we think about outreach, some of the things that we've run into is that whole change during the pandemic, where we went from meeting people in person and they got to know us and they got to, touch alumni and talk to them on the side, to having to do everything word of mouth for a couple of years. And I think from an ecosystem perspective, that's a big loss, because the cross-pollination across institutions to meet different people, you're really trying to provide opportunities for people to understand these things are possible. They can move ahead, and it's not obvious how you do it, but if you see someone who has, then you can get some confidence in yourself that you can do it. And I think this has been a challenge, being online. So one of the things that I think is so important is, and anybody who is figuring out how we can get back to networking in person. I know it's a pain in the neck. It takes more time. It's more expensive. But I think it's important for the ecosystem as well. It's really hard to count on finding the person among people that you meet online, and getting that inspiration is really reduced. So, we are very much looking forward to being back in person and encouraging people to come in person. And we'll keep watching that as we go through this process in this coming year. Let's see if we can move it on to the next one. I think we're a little bit, here we go. Well, while those are coming along, where one of the things that has been something we didn't recognize when we were starting, Marc, was that when you are working with innovators and with cutting edge technology, you're actually not working in a stable environment. You're working in an environment that's constantly changing. And that has a lot of impact on us delivering these programs, right? We rebuild the curriculum, we rebuild the mentor pool, we rebuild the screening group because the technology has changed. So that's something that's very important to us, is being able to be flexible around this. And as you can see, there are times when there have been big influxes of new technology, medical devices, when they started bringing, running integrated with cell phones and started putting data behind them. There were a lot of innovations then that were very interesting and came in. Right now, we're just seeing a lot more discrete kinds of innovations. It's not like there is a bolus of ideas. It's really spread across, and they're new areas of innovation. We have, from the very beginning, been called into question about whether some of the ventures coming through our program even had biosciences innovations, because the categories were novel. People hadn't heard about them, or they just didn't seem to make any sense. So, this is one of the things that also happens and is important, I think, to advocate for, which is how do you take risks, even in admitting people to programs where their technology is gaming, where their technology is behavior modification, to where their technology is based on education. And you think, okay, how do you you have to, as a program manager, be advocating for those people to get in and get a chance, but it's a very challenging environment for that. So we also, I just want to say a little bit about the education, which has been a big change for us. Our education, we had about 13 events a year when we started eLab in 2013. We went to, now we're running about 150 events for the program. So it's increased by a factor of 10 from where we started. It's a program that increased by a factor of 4 from pre-pandemic. So that's been a huge change, and the program now is a lot more customized than it used to be. We've got many people who are now coming in having essentially a very different experience based on who they're getting connected to, what classes they're coming to, what workshops they're being involved in, and what kind of connections are happening after those workshops. So we're, that's been a huge issue. We still have the same length of the program. We've added a month with the pre-program work. So we will do a prep class, because running 140 sessions is a lot for anybody to absorb. So we've spread that out. But the schedule is essentially unchanged from what it was 13 years ago in terms of the duration. After the pandemic, we did add another 4 weeks. And what the 4 weeks did for us was allow us to work with ventures and have them, I think they were marinating on ideas a little bit longer, and their pitches got better, their business models got stronger, and so we kept that. After the first year of the pandemic, we added that 4 extra weeks to the program, and I think that's been helpful. We also have had some changes in, kind of in the side of investment. We're definitely seeing more people investing earlier. So what is
just to ask real quick, I said I was gonna hold my questions, but are they more individual, like angels, or is it early stage VCs? What are you seeing?
We're seeing everything. We're
Okay.
seeing everything. We're seeing angels. We're seeing corporates come in earlier. We're seeing overseas investors come in earlier. There's always been a tremendous amount of overseas investment in the different programs that we run. But we're definitely seeing across the board people coming in quicker. I would say that the angel groups are getting more organized. We're seeing that. And I think part of that is because of things that are going on, that you're doing, you're highlighting and making it more apparent that you can, on a regular basis, meet and review investment opportunities, and people are better prepared for those. So I definitely see more interest there, and we're seeing it from New York Angels, we're seeing it from Westchester Angels, we're seeing it from Connecticut Angels, we're seeing it. I mean, it's just more active. It's more active, and people are more interested in setting up meetings. So we get, that's been interesting. We when we go back to connections and what kind of connections can you generate, like this is one of the things we obsess about, which is who's connecting and how many connections can we do and how is this all working. So the way you read this is, the people on the left side are the participants in the program, people on the right side are the connections that they make. And so you can sort of see in this diagram, these thick ribbons are, multiple connections that are being made. So we count a lot of these, whether you're connecting to a corporate supporter, whether you're connecting to mentors, whether you're connecting to people after webinars, whether you're connecting to people at workshops that we run. So, we're up in Westchester, north of 1,000 that are going on every cohort. So this is something that we're trying to figure out. How do you help people who are first-time founders connect, but how does it really work? And where are people connecting? Where are they not connecting? What do we need to do in education to help connect? I think a lot of what we're doing in the education is to prepare people to be with experts. So that's a big lift. If you're going to have a conversation with somebody who's, run product development for Siemens and is now a private investor and sitting on the board of an investment fund, you don't want to start with basic questions like, what do you do? What's a VC? They're expecting you to be pretty sophisticated. So, doing education does to facilitate that involves a lot. These are things that we've been working on in the WCBA ABCT programs. I want to talk about Next Milestone. This is a program that we've run since 2014. It is part of the New York State Certified Incubator Grant to SUNY Downstate. David Hochman told a really wonderful story about one of the founders of New York State Business Incubator Association who is advocating at the state level to get this kind of funding, so critical. And so much money has been raised, so many jobs have been created. We're providing workshops based on what people need at the incubator. Those expressed needs are also in the area of achieving a fundamental milestone and finding mentors to service those companies in very granular projects. And some samples of those projects have been listed here. These companies are ones that are past this stage of where they are in at Westchester in the accelerator. And it's a tricky position to find these people, but one of the things that allows for is to have some of these ventures who are very, very busy delivering on SBIR grants, delivering on seed funding, or maybe rolling a to help them actually accomplish those milestones, which are now so very important for continued funding and support. So this has been a vital program, and it's also been a hard one to run. When you decide, are you going to coach scientists who are going to raise from a bench to a manager of other scientists in the lab. Now it's a commercial lab. There's not a lot of that's been going on. And, so there's been a lot of flyers here, and we've been very, very fortunate with who we've been able to work with, who are all from the state as paid mentors to support these ventures to move forward. So it's been very, very exciting to see this play a small part in, the extraordinary success of, one of the strongest incubators in the state, the SUNY Downstate programs. It's really been amazing to watch. Some of a couple of companies going public, getting bought, getting sold. It's a real special place. We've also relaunched the eLab program. So eLab had been a cohort just like WCBA and ABCT. The cohort was replaced in 2022 with master classes to help people with challenges. So we started with due diligence in 2022. We ran another one in 2023. We'll do this again in 2024. It's something that we're seeing so many ventures need at this point as the funding has slowed down, as the scrutiny has increased, as the process has been expanded. How do you you need the money and you got to move forward. How do you get people ready for that? So we have 39 investors come and talk about what's their process and where do they see problems and how are people recovering from the challenges that people are seeing and preventing them from moving forward and signing deals. We started a clinical trials one because we saw so many people moving toward clinical trials. So many people are told, hey, you need more data. So how do you do that? And how do you do that without having to get into that whole, you need $2-3 million to get through a clinical trial. What can you do in the meantime? How do you keep inching forward with that? We had two tracks with that, people who had never done clinical trials and then people who were looking to comply with the new DEI requirements that FDA provided in the end of 2022. And then business development, which we're running at the end of this month because so many people are saying, look, let's just see the revenue. What's your revenue? We want to see revenue. And we encourage people to have revenue, but the plans that people are now scrutinizing on the business development side, starting with explain to me who's going to buy this and how am I going to get liquid at the end of this investment, and going right through to how do you show, the path forward and the scaling opportunity are where we've come in for this. So we're really excited about these programs. We've had fantastic experts come in from New York, from New Jersey, from Pennsylvania, from Connecticut, from Massachusetts to join these programs. So we're getting a perspective from again, a regional basis to try and help people navigate. So, let me just stop. I've talked a lot. Our program team is fantastic. And we really couldn't do it without the people who are here. We have a lot of ventures who are supported because they have got entrepreneurs who are coaching them. And there have been people who know the community for a long time. They know, the ventures who came through 4 years ago and 6 years ago and 8 years ago, and they're encouraging people and they're putting them in touch with one another. So that alumni pool has been fantastic. Really high percentage of them come back, they mentor, they participate in screening, they are educating and sharing what their latest deal looked like and where they ran into problems and mistakes they made that they wouldn't make again. So it's been very rewarding and I think inspiring for so many of the ventures coming through in the current cohorts to hear how these challenges have been navigated and that these challenges aren't new. They're just, you need to find your own way through this these set of building blocks that you've got in front of you. So it's been a pleasure to work with the team to get all this done. So we're very thrilled to be here in New York and in here with BIANYS, and glad to take some questions.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna lead off the questions with, because you've had a lot of experience over well over 10 years on mentoring companies in the life sciences space in the New York metro area. Have you seen some differences and changes in the entrepreneur that you're seeing? Are they between 2012 and 2022, 2023? And what are those differences?
Yeah, that's a really great question. In 2012, 2013, we saw more ideas than we saw people who had, you know, tested and talked to people about their ideas. And so I would say they're more fleshed out. It became harder to get into the program. I think there was a kind of comment that the pitches got better every year, and it was because they came in more prepared. And it was more competitive to get in, you know, if you had someone who was a little further along. So that I would say is different. What I would say is still pretty challenging is um, the um, the awareness, and First Pitch used to do this in the city in particular to provide an opportunity for people to hear pitches. And I think that one of the things that's challenging is hearing really good quality pitches. I still think that's a challenge, and I think that it's an unbelievable. It's kind of like playing a sport with somebody who's better than you. You know, you learn by seeing it, and I think that's something that we can continue to explore, because I think there are, you know, there's the rap that Boston has more sophisticated business models or pitches. It's a style. It doesn't necessarily mean the companies are stronger, the technology is any better. But I do think that the pitches are substantively different, and I think that that's something that we can continue to work on. I think that there is, and in that way, I think there's even more potential for what's coming out of New York. I think the substance is there.
Great. I'm going to hold off on my other question just to give time to the audience. And I know early on, Joe, you had your hand raised. If you'd like to come off mute and ask your question.
Great, thanks, Mark, and great finding Mary. Mary, I've been a long-time fan. You're a rock star. I love your programs, and very grateful for you taking the time this afternoon. You know, when I look at the geographic distribution of your programs, New York City, Westchester, Connecticut, and obviously SUNY Downstate, it seems to me the obvious that Long Island ought to be the next place that First Time Founder expands to. And so I was interested to learn that SUNY Downstate uses their New York State certification funds to support your programs. I'm curious, the other locations, is it government funding? Is it institutional funding? Is it primarily the corporate sponsors? You know, I'm looking across the table at Mark and saying, you know, how do we get Mary out to Long Island next? And how do we secure the funding to make that happen? And the second part of my question, Mary, is one of my concerns with that expansion is whether or not the deal flow, meaning, you know, the entrepreneurs with the ideas, with the startups, if there's enough there on Long Island as compared to some of these other regions. I'm hopeful that there is. I'm optimistic that there is, but I'm curious what your view is on that as well. So, you know, the other funding sources that support your effort, and whether or not that you share that concern about deal flow.
Yeah, such good questions. So as far as funding, and I would say that the board has always been like concerned, like, where's the money going to come from to run this? Because you don't charge anyone, you don't have upside in equity, and so what are you doing here? And we say, look, you know, we're all a bunch of founders, and it's hard to tell people really protect your jewels if you the first person that you work with takes some of these away, right? So to us, we said, okay, this is our responsibility. We got to figure out how to fund this thing. You know, I think that Eva Kramer was really you know, clever about getting New York State funding for the support of a follow-on program, and that worked out really well. I think that what you know, is that something that could be replicated? Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that what we're seeing is that, of the 140, 150 events a year being run for Westchester, they're not, most of them are not in person. So you can do this, and there is economies of scale in running a couple together. So that does make sense to be able to do something in other places in New York State. The current programs are funded by municipalities, and so this was a question we had, was like, who's going to pay, because we know the entrepreneurs don't have any money. We know that it's very hard to teach basic things, and you don't kind of want to play the cards before you know what the game's rules are. So you've got to work with people for a little bit. So we thought the pitch to make was, look, if you create jobs with this, which is nothing new, a lot of people are thinking about it that way. Can you justify the expenditure on the municipality's part by saying you're going to get it? It's just going to be deferred, right? So that's been the gamble. Can you actually create those jobs, and can you realize them? So this is an assertion. One of the things that I think is tough is that, like, there's not a validation, an external validation. We count and have people say this is how many jobs are being created, how much money that's being, but it'd be kind of nice to have something independently. And I don't know if that's something New York State Business Incubator Association could get involved in, but just to say, hey, look, these things, here's how this works. We talked to one organization about externally validating. It was like 10 grand just to get them to look at our numbers and say that our numbers, and we were like, wait a minute, what's the step up from there? That because it's sort of like, I don't know what, what's the real value added there. So I think that it is a weight. It's a weight, and we do ask the corporate supporters to provide money. We look at how much time they put into it, and the value of their time dwarfs their cash contribution, and we can't run it without both. So, it's tricky, right? You've got people with roles and different ways of paying, and you're trying to keep this together and keep moving it forward when, you don't know what next year's technology is going to be. You don't know who the founders are, so that those things are not things that we have nailed down. We've seen some things, Joe, in other locations, and in other industries where there are sharing of resources, so that there's a better understanding overall of regional capabilities and skills. And so you're, really getting a consensus about who ought to be getting more training and more support. I think that's a really interesting idea for us to look at in New York, and make sure that we're investing in the people who can benefit it from most at the right time. I think that makes sense. And it also helps when there's the one person who comes out of the one place that never has had that person before. And, because there are halo effects for places that have had people before, and they may not be as good, but the other institutions may not get the hearing, or they may not even be aware of it, because there's just not enough, time for a lot of people. It's not built in how we spend our time. So, I think, are we out of ideas? No. And I'll tell you why I believe that. Number one, in Connecticut, 50% of the ventures are not out of academic institutions. 50%. Why is that? Where are they coming from? They're serial inventors that have never been trained in business. They've made every single mistake you can think of, and there are people who are who have left Medtronic, they've left Bayer, in some cases years ago, and they're running a service bureau, and they've been, saving money to build a product that they thought would work, and they left Pfizer and they had this other idea, or they just moved back from California and they have this appetite for doing something entrepreneurial, and why not? They've got the resources to do it. So I think that, when we look at the numbers in New York City, it's more like 75-80% are out of academic research institutions. When you go to Westchester, the number drops. It's more like 60% are out of academic research institutions. Sometimes it's lower than that, it's 50. And you've got the whole international element that comes in, where people want to, they're told by their investors, they're told by their board, your market's bigger than wherever you're from. You've got to come from Seattle or Canada or Israel or, France, and you've got to go get access to customers. You've got to go raise some money. You've got to become a global company. So, I think is there, and what that means is that they're moving their headquarters here. We are not seeing people stay a foreign company. They're moving their headquarters here.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, John.
Can I ask one clarifying question related to this? I was just wondering, are you a registered for-profit or not-for-profit, which can explain much of your programs and goals with your target clients?
Yeah, we are a for-profit company. We are an LLC. Unlike programs that are run out of a corporation, where there has to be a strategic alignment, with initiatives or annual goals, we do not have that. So we have taken risks on things like, health education as a or education as a technology, or when we did the first year, we had 2 wound healing products that came in, both of which were terrible, had done terribly in the market, right? And we were like, well, we still have a problem with wound healing, so we better give this another shot. It's still out there. So that mix has actually worked out pretty well for us to give us the flexibility to take flyers on things that were not even recognized as categories.
Okay.
We did some of the first wellness products that were in late stimulation and things that really seem pretty far-fetched. Dry labs we had last year, and we just had people just screaming about there's no such thing as a dry lab. And we were like, it's coming. The digital lab to do the experiments in is coming, and here's another one who's working on it. So
have you considered registering as a B Corp or a benefit corporation? Because from whatever I heard, you're just a benefit or corporation or a social enterprise, and there are many benefits of registering as such a B Corp, B corporation.
Yeah, we're not as familiar as we should be about B corporations, but I will say the thing that really has resonated with people has been this idea of a community supported agriculture as a model, that people really want to participate in their community. They really want to see that they have engagement with it, right? And the generosity is extraordinary in that sense. We really could never have done any of this because there are just so many people who are so talented, who are not just interested, but they're anxious. They want to see these companies move forward. I mean, our number one request from mentors is, where are they now? That's what they all want to know. They want to know what's happened to them.
Right. That's great. All right.
Thank you.
One last question, and then we'll break up. I think we have two minutes left. after editing, by the way, is the when we spoke, we were talking about some of the programs that BIANYS does, and you have a program that might be beneficial to some of the members around New York State in terms of if they have a company that needs help specifically in New York City on a temporary basis. Do you want to highlight that now, or should we do that in a follow-up newsletter?
Let's do that in a follow-up newsletter.
Okay.
I think one of the challenges has been, New York is a fantastic place. New York City is a fantastic place to do business, and it's really expensive. So how do you stay and take advantage of what you've got where you are and have a vehicle to engage with the business opportunities in New York City? And that's absolutely critical for emerging companies to sort out.
Okay, well, it's food for thought, and we'll continue to discuss it. Thank you so much for your time, Mary. This was a great overview of the programs.
Thank you.
And we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being
Bye.
here. We'll see you.